For the last 15 years, I've been on a quest to discover the DNA of the most successful digital leaders in the world. What makes them tick, what's in their minds and in their hearts. We are sharing deep insights from our world-class CIOs so that you get inspired, can learn and reach your full potential as a digital leader. If you are an ambitious technology executive, then I invite you to join CIONET. Join our community so that you too can realize your ambition.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world today, joining us for another edition of CIONET Spotlight. I'm Mark Zawacki and welcome back. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Shankar Arumugavelu, who is the group SVP and CIO of Verizon. Verizon, as you know, is one of the world's largest telecommunications and mobility companies, 120 billion US dollars in revenue. That's broken down about 90 billion on the consumer side and about 32 billion on the business side. Within IT, Shankar has 9,000 plus employees spread throughout the world. Now, for those of our regular viewers, you know that I pride myself in kind of thinking back on the career advancement of all the digital leaders we feature every week. And Shankar kept it so easy this week. He's basically had one job since he got out of graduate school. Got out of Florida State with a master's in computer science, and very quickly got picked up by the old GE and GTE. GTE got acquired by one of the Bell companies. That then went into Verizon, and he's pretty much been there ever since. So he's had a multi-decade career, two acquisitions in that process, but basically one company, which is highly, highly unusual for a digital leader in 2021. So how'd I do, Shankar? Did I get it right?
Absolutely. So Mark, first off, thanks for having me, and great to be here with you. And yes, as you pointed out, multi-decade tenure with Verizon and its predecessor companies. And I will add, never a dull moment though during that whole process. So certainly be
I can imagine. And with all those acquisitions and the complexity of the telecommunications industry, as you said, it probably felt like a new company every year or two anyways.
Absolutely, right. And the privilege of having that front row seat to the evolution in communications technology, all the way from your plain old telephone service, dial-up and ISDN and DSL, and then into fiber optic on the wireline side, then moving into 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G on the wireless side. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to learn and grow within the company, and never a dull moment, like I said.
Right. And also unusual to your background, you were recently appointed to the board of a publicly traded company, and it's rare that you see CIOs take on public board seats, but you just a couple of months ago were named on the audit and finance chair at Seagate Technologies out in California. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I know that's inspirational for a lot of other CIOs. I'm sure they have questions about how you got public board work. Somewhat unusual for CIOs. So congrats on that. Hey, let's jump in. As you know, this is just an informal chat between two people, and we happen to have a lot of listeners online. This is streaming to all of our social media channels. Background. Let's look back a couple of years. Certainly 2020 was a very pivotal year. We had earlier discussed in advance of today's webinar that you had some foundational things in place that made the time during COVID work well. And you made some decisions as a business and as a technology leader, back in 2016, 2017, 2018, that when we got to 2020, you guys were ready. Can you unpack that for us and kind of explain that, some of the projects that were done, you had no idea, we'd face the 2020 we did. So what happened, earlier that really set you up for the, the unusual transition you had to make as a business?
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Mark. So the groundwork of our COVID response in Verizon was rooted in our digital transformation journey that we had embarked on several years ahead, as you pointed out. And just it's important to give some context on this as well, right? So when you think about a workforce of about 135,000 employees, and we had to pivot around 115,000 of them over a weekend to work remotely. We looked at how the organization was structured, right? Broadly, there are staff functions, there are frontline employees. And within frontline employees, you have retail, you have customer service, you have field technicians. So several years back, we had also embarked on this program in the call center group called home-based agents. So we had trialed that. Like about 20% of our employees were working out of their homes even before COVID struck, right? So, but our retail employees, none of them, they were not equipped to work from home. They had to be in our brick and mortar retail stores to work with customers. Same way with our field technicians as well, who had to go to customers' home to do the installation and maintenance, et cetera. And then on the staff side, the staff employees were equipped to work from home, but not everybody at the same time. So there are a few things that we had done in our digital transformation journey that really positioned us well. One is to have that scalable network that was enabled through automation, such as software-defined networking, virtual network services, et cetera. And what that allowed us to do is literally when we had to pivot the entire organization over, switching, adding the VPN appliances or the number of VPN licenses or the augmenting the capacity of our multi-factor authentication platform, or augmenting the bandwidth of the ISP circuits coming into our data centers. It was very straightforward for us to go ahead and get that done. So that would be one of the examples I can give you. The other one I would say is the hybrid cloud strategy that we had adopted even before the pandemic struck. That allowed us to take advantage of the elasticity in a timely manner. So we were able to provision compute instances on the fly without really needing any prep time, et cetera, using cloud-based collaboration tools, right? Because the productivity and collaboration tools were really, dealing with a lot of demand when you had to pivot folks over to work remotely. So having that cloud-based collaboration tools was a big one. And the last one I would cite is having the virtualized desktops in our call centers as well. That positioned us well to be able to flip. When we had to move 100% of our call center agents to work from home, it was very straightforward for us to go ahead and get that implemented.
On that, I'm just curious on the second one you mentioned with, with the cloud-based solutions. Is that a private cloud that Verizon architecture built and you commercialize and you sell presumably to your business customers, or is that third-party resale that you just,
Yeah, when we talk about
and pass through?
Yeah, when we talk about the hybrid cloud, there are, of course, we have private cloud and we also use public cloud for the right kind of workloads, right? There are some applications that we run only on private for a lot of reasons, whether it be data sovereignty or latency requirements, et cetera. And then there are some that are qualified or are eligible to run in the public cloud as well. So having that hybrid option was very helpful, and same thing was good for us from a productivity and collaboration tools as well. Some of them were tools that were running in the public cloud, in the CSPs, the cloud service providers. This was their SaaS offering. Some of them we ran within our private cloud as well for some of the tools. It's a combination. It was really hybrid that really helped us out.
Got it. And I think of you as a leading mobile provider globally, but you're also a service provider, and you've got, on the business side, you've got a $30+ billion a year business providing these services. So the old phrase about eating your own dog food, you're designing solutions for the commercial market that you're using yourself.
That's right. That's right.
What is that like?
We look at this as customer zero for the products that we sell, whether it be our security products or other services. Of course, as a network service provider as well, all the network connectivity that becomes critical. So we view ourselves, the internal technology organization, as customer zero.
And are there parts of your organization that are collaborating with the product teams and really designing those solutions, or do the product teams that are devolved into the business design those solutions and you're as you described, the ground zero customer? Or are you actually co-architecting some of that?
In some
and what
cases,
you really getting involved?
In some cases, we co-innovate, co-architect solutions. Some cases, it is a product team that's built that, and then they would deploy that in, we will use that internally and provide feedback and fine-tune the product before it goes GA.
Got it. And I seem to recall, just from personal experience, you also have a huge, you mentioned security, you've got dozens of vendors that you're plugging into, broader solution suites as well, right? So it's also kind of a hybrid approach of, leading third-party security vendors combined with your own hybrid solutions that you roll out into the enterprise or business customer space.
Yeah, Mark, in this space, it's so complex, right? It's all about defense in depth. So you need to have, multiple solutions that you have architected for. So in the event one fails, there is another one to protect yourself, right? And then there are niche vendors, suppliers in this space whose core competency are in each of these areas. Some of them, we have built it ourselves. Some of them we partner with third parties, but when you integrate them all together, that's what helps us bring that defense in depth philosophy to life.
What's the big picture in security these days from your perspective, from your perch? I mean, you're seeing threats on a global basis. You're working with, dozens of leading edge security companies. You're working with, other vendors. But what's the framework or, mental model that you put on top of that complexity? It's an asymmetrical giant cat and mouse game. The emerging threats are appearing daily, and obviously without breaking proprietary information. What's a mindset that an up and coming CIO in a smaller organization can learn from a Verizon? I mean, how would you frame that space and how to think about it at scale?
Yeah, the way the framework we use is the NIST CSF framework, right? This is the National Institute of Standards and Technology Cybersecurity framework. There are 5 pillars to that: identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. So that's the framework at a highest level. Right now, when you double click and you go into details, we can go into the weeds in each of these pillars. But at a highest level, you start with identifying what are the information assets that you're trying to protect. What are those crown jewels? What is important that you're trying to protect? Then you figure out, okay, now that you've identified those assets, information assets, how are you going to protect them? And this is where, whether it is encryption, is it tokenization, are you putting that behind the firewall? What other, do you need runtime application security protection? What kind of OWASP vulnerability protection that you're going to put in place? You can go on, static source code screening, web, IP vulnerability scans, bunch of these different things that you'll have to take care from a protection standpoint, right? Then it's the act of detecting. When you see signals that bad actors are in and you're seeing some anomaly, you're detecting that, what kind of tools do you have in place to detect that? Now, once you detect that, how do you respond, right? And then how do you recover the whole thing? So that's at the highest level. I have significantly oversimplified this, but you get the idea. That's the framework that we use. And then there are tools, that is people, process, and technology that plays a big part across all these 5 pillars that I talked about.
And last security question, and then we'll shift gears. Is it business as usual for the foreseeable future, or do you see some game changer, either technologies or processes or incentives, or is it just constant education and it's still a lot of social engineering, or do you see the dynamics of the of the actors against businesses and enterprises globally remaining pretty much static and pretty much the game we've seen play out the last 20 years and evolve? Yeah. Or do you see any fundamental changes in the nature of threats, either or certain technologies, or is it more business as usual, or are we going to see dramatic changes in this domain?
You're going to see, pretty much the phishing whether it is social engineering, as you pointed out, ransomware attacks that we're all seeing in the news as well play out, right? So those are all things that the hackers out there are attempting, and the techniques are something. Some of these techniques are known, to your point. The focus area is actually to really see how we are doubling down, and the incentives. What we are seeing here as well is that financial motive is really the driver for these kind of attacks. So what kind of ransomware protection programs do you have in place? Cyber resiliency exercises, just like how we do disaster recovery exercises on a regular basis. Is it a good practice to have these cyber resiliency exercises? What is your backup restoral strategy, right? So in the event of a ransomware, how do you deal with these things? All of those things have to be looked at.
Yeah, got it. Really fascinating. Let's switch gears a little bit and look forward, starting with technology. And can only imagine with 120 billion in revenue and 9,000 people, your technology budget and where you're going to spend money the next couple of years is extraordinarily large. But where, generally speaking, at a high level, where do you really see big investments being made? Is it in automation and RPA? Is it in ML and AI? Is it in more cyber? Obviously, all of the above. But again, what's your frame and how you're thinking about this? You mentioned SDN. I think I heard that buzzword 20 years ago, and I know Cisco had a big early push, and even MCI had a big early push with it before it was Verizon. But where, how do you break down technology expenditures and prioritizations, and what's capturing your mind and the other digital leaders at Verizon these days?
Yeah, a few areas I would say, Mark, when you really think about what the pandemic has done, right? So it's really accelerated that digital transformation virtually across every industry, right? Mm-hmm. Look at the digital literacy, the digital dexterity of the entire population, the customer base, and the employees within enterprises has increased several fold. So continuing on that theme, really digital work to really look at how we view digital going forward. And our view on this, out of personal experience going through this for the past 15 months as well, we are clear that the world that we are moving into there is going to be a place for brick and mortar retail as well. There is a place for digital. And what's going to be the winning formula is that convergence of physical and digital. And we call that phygital. That is really what we see as the way of the future in terms of meeting the customer when and where they want to be met, right? Place where they want, and then providing that seamless omni-channel experience to our customers, no matter whether they are interacting in a brick and mortar store or in our digital asset. How do you really bring them together? If they are in a retail store, how do you provide a digital companion to really make their shopping experience much better? If they are on our digital property, when is that right time to engage and provide them a helping hand to complete whatever they are there to do? So that is going to be a big focus for us, that omni-channel convergence of physical and digital. I would also add hyper-personalization is a big thing, right? The whole real-time marketing aspect, rather than marketing traditionally how it's done one-to-many, it's really a one-to-one, specifically tailoring messages, anticipating that customer. You're going to see that's going to be a big focus for us. From a technology standpoint, so what does this all mean? Few areas I would say. Like you mentioned, big focus and a priority for us to industrialize AI, moving away from this artisanal analytics work, if you will, to truly building an AI factory. And there is a lot of underpinnings that's going to be needed for that to be successful, to really have a ML ops pipeline, have a strong data governance, because when you talk machine learning, it's learning from the data set there. So garbage in, garbage out, right? So you have to make sure that the data that it's learning, the models are learning from, are absolutely the right ones that you want to have. So that's one area of focus for us. We're also building out our what we call the system of insights, because as a telecommunications service provider, there's a lot of telemetry information that we get, whether it be the devices, whether it be the customer's experience on the network, or the interactions customers have with us in our channels, or the interaction we have as a business with the customer in terms of sending the monthly bill and communication messages, etc. How do you put all of that together? Convert that data to an insight that you can then act on to provide that personalized experience, right? So that's that system of insights factory that we are building. And the last one I would tell you, in addition to everything else you talked about, security is paramount. We will not take our eye off the ball on that. But an area that we are putting additional emphasis on now is what we refer to as the site reliability engineering and AI ops. How do you bring in AI into the operations space to be able to proactively detect and have these self-healing applications, ultimately to deliver the best experience possible for our employees, internal employees, and our customers as well. So those are some of the areas where I'm spending most of my time and making sure we are positioning the organization with the talent, with the investments necessary to be successful.
I want to go a little deeper on a couple of those because they were very interesting. Go back to, let's start with phygital. And I like that, the merging of physical and digital, phygital. What practically speaking does a customer journey look like in phygital? And you mentioned retail, right? You've got stores in urban areas. They're all over there in shopping malls. They're on busy downtown streets. And we know where the nearest Verizon retail store is. And we walk in and we're typically upgrading a phone, but you've already mapped out a customer journey that's different in that phygital world. What does that look like?
So yeah, that's a great question. So think about this scenario where now the customer is doing their learning, right? Generally the customer journey can be broken down into a learn phase. You buy, you get the device, you use the service, you pay, and then there's support, right? That's what we call the LB-GUPS model.
Yeah.
So customer is learning on our digital properties. They feel like, okay, fine, I know what I want, but I need some help. I want to be able to now have a video assist conversation with a sales rep. So they can get on a video meeting just like how you and I are having here with a sales rep, and help them wherever they are stuck in terms of whether it is the device that they're looking at or the plan that they are looking for, etc. The rep helps them, they can complete that order. Now you can go for an in-store pickup, right? So you start a digital, you're completing the transaction there. You're not waiting for the shipment to arrive. Instead, you said, you know what? I want it right now during my lunch break. Fine, I'm just gonna place an in-store pickup order. I go there. Now, there is another option as well where we provide customers to say, you can do curbside pickup as well. So you don't necessarily need to even step foot into the retail store. So when you pull in to the parking lot, we now have geofenced you to really know that, yes, you are there, your device is ready, you have a sales rep walking out. So imagine, so it's all about, Mark, respecting the customer's time, right? So that is what it is. So anticipating the customer where they are. So now that transaction time, in a matter of 3-5 minutes, they are in and out. Some may say, no, I still want to go in and I want to see what other accessories, etc. Fine, that's an option too. Now you come the other way around. You are in a retail store, but you also want to now engage and see what other products, because the shelf space that we have there, etc. That's, in a retail store, in that square footage, that is limited. But if you want to explore other things, what kind of a digital experience can we provide to our customers so they can get that endless aisle experience, if you will, where they can see this, or if they see that there are other reps who are busy helping other customers, can they engage with somebody else who has time to help them, right? That relationship, that physical plus digital, that's kind of what we call phygital in our world.
I like that, and I like the geo fencing example. I was actually thinking of geo fencing before you mentioned it. And I thought, gee, imagine if I'm walking down the street and I'm within 400 feet of a retail store. You can see my phone. You can see that I'm doing an upgrade. You could probably text me for a $50 discount if I walk in the next 10 minutes. And I mean, I'm sure you can, all kinds of geofencing case studies that you can do.
But that is important thing there, though, Mark, is with the consent. With the consent of that, the customer, right? So say, okay, I'm coming in, I want to do a curbside pickup. When you choose that option is where we now know, okay, Mark has arrived. Let me just go now, and you check in. When you arrive there, it just automatically pops up. You're here. You want to check in. You check in. A sales rep inside gets the notification. They walk out with your bag.
I think there's actually some research that shows that geofencing is not salesy and it's highly effective with consent, and if done in the right way, it's an extraordinarily powerful channel. But it's got to be done the right way.
It has to be done the right way. It has to respect customers' privacy, and it's all about respecting customers' time at the end of the day. Time is money. And that's what customers look for. They don't want to be sitting, standing there waiting for somebody, et cetera. They say, I want to be in and out. I've done all the work. Just give me the stuff. I'm off.
And Shankar, another thing you mentioned, I believe the phrase you used was operationalizing AI, but this big thrust on AI and how you're building that out. But I believe your term was industrializing
AI. Yes.
Industrializing AI. Thank you. When I talk to other digital leaders and CIOs, what they tell me is that these thousands of, and there's a few thousand now, but these AI vendors are pretty horizontal. But when you really look at the nuts and bolts of AI and ML, they're quite discrete and they're quite verticalized. Do you kind of agree with that premise that the hundreds of AI vendors that knock on your team's door every week, trying to sell you, some AI technology, that they tend to be pretty horizontal, and you're looking, and your team really needs to then specialize and verticalize that? That's
such an open-ended question, Mark, because when you say AI, see, there are several disciplines within AI, right? So computer vision is AI. Natural language processing is AI. RPA, intelligent automation, is AI. Machine learning is AI, right? Cognitive decisioning. So I think first step, you have to know, okay, what are we talking about in this spectrum of artificial intelligence? And then there are tools. When it is intelligent automation, yes, you have a whole lot of suppliers in the space of how you do robotic process automation, attended and unattended bots, and there is a space for that in an enterprise of our scale, right? And we do that. When it comes to machine learning, it all starts with data, right? Because what is machine learning at the end of the day? Learning from historical data, drawing the patterns, and then being able to predict the future when you have new set of data that's flowing through that model, right? So it starts with the robust data governance framework that you need to have. What kind of models you're building? How are you training the models? How do you do version control of the models? The model development life cycle has to be cared for. So there are a lot of vendors who care for, how do I do data virtualization? How do I do data governance? And then there are vendors who do a model lifecycle management. So these are all and you have to put them all together. So it's not that you can expect someone to just come in with one monolithic thing that's going to be the solution for your problem set. You'll have to integrate these different best of breed solutions to truly build out this AI factory that I was talking about.
Yeah, and I have seen those AI taxonomies, and very well said, like AI isn't AI. I mean, you really have to parse it out, and there's so many different pieces to it. And you're right, it ultimately becomes a blended solution where you're going to have to find a best of breed and sew several different technologies together to achieve that end result. Well, very well said on your part. Thank you. 30 minutes goes very quickly, Shankar. I have one last question for you, and it's for our regular viewers. They know I ask the same question in closing, and I'll ask you the same, and that is, I know that in your back pocket, you've got a tool, a process, a technique. Shankar is known for all of the people that work for you as kind of a go-to thing that you pull out of your pocket when needed to get a result. And I'm asking you to share, some best practice that you've developed in your, multi-decade career at Verizon, that when you share it with all the other listeners today, they can add that to their toolkit as well. So could be a process, could be a technique, could be a way of thinking about things, could be a people issue, could be a technology issue, could be a board issue. What does Shankar pull out every time in a situation that gets a result?
Great. I'll be glad to share this, Mark. So if you talk to anyone in my organization in Verizon, they will talk about my 5Q framework, right? So what do I mean with this 5Q framework? It is an intelligence quotient, IQ, emotional quotient, EQ, execution quotient, XQ, strategic quotient, SQ, and just 2 years back, I added this. And by the way, this framework is something that I've stuck to for the past 18 years, okay? So it started off with 4 Qs, and then just 2 years back, I added the 5th Q, which is the adaptability quotient. And why I'm saying this as a leader for me, this is something that's helped me guide where I'm spending my time. Because to be an effective leader, you have to be good at leading yourself first. Where are you spending your time? So when I talk about IQ, that's where I go to make sure as a technology leader, I have to keep myself abreast with what's happening in the technology space. What is going on there? Where do I go? Who do I talk to learn more? Same thing with emotional, right? When you talk about spending time with the team, you build trust with the team when you are empathic, when you're humble, and how you show up there. You build a respect with your IQ. And then when you, with your XQ, which is the execution, that's how you get things done. And that's how you build the credibility in the organization as well. And then adaptability is all about unlearning things, learning new things, and being open to embracing change and uncertainty. So that's what I stick to.
And the fourth one, I believe skipped over, was strategic.
Fourth one is strategic. In that, as a leader, it's important to make sure that you're positioning and repositioning the organization, seeing what's coming around the corner to make sure that you're making those pivots, right? So that's how I evaluate myself. I use that to make sure I'm spending the time in the right spaces. And all my direct reports know when I have appraisals with them, that's how I appraise them as well.
Shankar, that was wonderful. Really appreciate you spending time today. Very insightful. We're building a show reel of all of the greatest hits from the interviews we've been doing, and certainly some of your sound bites are going to feature. I love the 5Q framework. If I use it, and I will use it, I'm certainly going to give you credit. But on behalf of everyone at CIONET, thank you so much. For our regular viewers, see you same time next week. We've got a full summer of other interviewees coming up. So Shankar, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll be in touch. Thank you.